sick, man. Imagine reading this in the paper, all right? I got a job for you that I think you might like. You live in D.C., your travel is paid for by the government, you party with the likes of Gorby, Ronnie, and Bonnie Prince Charles. Ugh. And you speak at colleges, on TV, get first-class treatment everywhere you go. And for that, you get $89,500 a year, huh? Sound great, right? Want the job? Well, Congress and those guys from the districts who call themselves congressmen say that ain't enough money, and they're going to raise their salaries by $45,000 a year. And they think that we, the people, can't do a damn thing about it. Oh, yeah? Just watch us. Also on this show, remember the Jean Harris killing, huh? She's the one who shot her lover, the Scarsdale diet doctor. Apparently didn't take enough weight off her. She decided to take a little off him. Now her rich and powerful friends say that 9 years in prison is enough. She should be pardoned. Well, pal, murder is murder. Everybody pays equally. I hope you're not upset if you're watching this, Miss Harris, in prison. But I'll come up and visit you next year, and so will the audience, because we want you in prison. Come on! Good. Want to introduce the folks that we have with us tonight at home base. Get your scorecards out. Home base, we have Jim Glassman, the editor of Roll Call. Jim.
Yes.
How are you, pal? Good. Jim Davidson is with us. He's chairman of the National Taxpayers Union. There's a union that all of us should be represented in, but unfortunately we never get heard, do we? And at loudmouth number one, we have Lenny Brenner, the author. The lesser evil, the Democratic Party, etc. Right? Let me start with you, Jim. Let me ask you this. The United States Congressman travels all over the world, goes to parties every night, makes valuable, meaningful decisions that affect the future of the world, gets paid damn near $90,000. Does that sound like a hardship case to you?
Well, I think it's a tough job. It's a lot tougher than you made it out.
Nobody else wants it, right?
No, I think a lot of people want it. The question is whether the best people in America want it and whether the best people in America are trying to get it. I mean, Congress may make $90,000, but you have...
Who are the best people?
Well...
best people, only people who make a lot of money?
Well, I think to a great extent, unfortunately, that's the way our society works. I mean, you got
No, that's the way we make it work. The best people aren't always the people who make the most money. The best people are the people who've had to struggle a little bit.
Well, I agree with that, and I think a lot of people in Congress have had to struggle. But I also think that in order to attract good people, you get what you pay for. And in order to attract good people to Congress, just as you try to attract good people to industry or to other parts of the public sector, you got to pay them a decent amount of money. And $90,000 may seem like a lot of money, but frankly, when you compare it to 273 CEOs, according to Forbes, make more than $1 million. Of the top 800
they're
CEOs...
They're producing a profit to make it. The congressmen have gotten into a deficit, and they're making nothing.
The highest paid CEO in America last year made $60 million, and he ran a company called Toys R Us. Now, maybe that's, that may well be more important than what Congress does, but he made more money than the entire Congress. If you take all 500...
kids happy, congressmen don't make anyone happy.
Well, I'm not... If congressmen don't make anyone happy, then why are they being reelected at a rate of 98% in the House and about 80% in the Senate?
All right, both you and I know that when you have the franking privilege, and then when you send out the newsletter to your home district all the time, you have a great advantage. But let me ask you this. You say that CEOs and people are making more than $90,000. I agree with you. Does a guy who comes into his job for the first year make as much as the guy who's in the job for 20 years? Is that right?
No, I don't think it is right. And in fact, it's not a bad idea.
Problem there.
But 130. But if the cap is 90 or the cap is 135, you can't make any more. In other words, you take somebody like Lloyd Benson who runs the finance committee and does a darn good job of it. He will never make more than $135,000.
He won't?
Or $90,000 according
Lloyd
to...
Benson broke?
Well, in fact, that's a good point.
Does he have a lot of money?
He sure does. And I think that's one of the big problems right now with the amount of money that people get in Congress. What you end up with is a lot of millionaires. You got Teddy Kennedy. You've got Jay Rockefeller.
He never held a
You've
job.
got John
I beg your pardon.
Exactly.
He held a job, an appointed job once in his life.
That's exactly right. I'm not making a
cap.
I'm not making a case for Teddy Kennedy.
89,000 is not the cap because then they're allowed to pick up bucks in the way of honorariums, $2,000
Right, and I
for a
totally
speech,
oppose that.
And some of those speeches they make on golf courses.
Well, look,
okay?
I mean, you're not going to get me to defend
so
that.
Let me interject. Let me interject here because while I'm opposed to the pay raise, while I understand they have to have 2 residences, right, and that's expensive, while I'm opposed still to this type of a pay raise and the way we came about getting it, I'm also opposed to them not being able to earn something when they go out on honorariums for this reason. If you let these lazy BASTARDSs not get a dime, they ain't ever going out to see the people, all right, until it's election time. I want those guys out on the firing line, being asked questions and being responsive to the people.
Yeah, but they're not going out to see the people. They're going out to see the pack rats. In other words, the business packs that give them the $2,000 are not the people. The Congress of the United States already, right now at 89,500, makes more than 98% of all the people in the United States of America.
About 5 times more than the average American makes.
All right.
By the way, that
plus they take in bucks.
I mean, that ratio.
They make about another 20%, another $18,000 they pull down in honorariums. Plus they get campaign contributions from the same guys that give them those honorariums. Now those honorariums and those campaign contributions are bribes. Okay, to be blunt about it.
If they're bribes, then people go to jail for it.
Republican or Democrat, it's as crooked as a dog's hind leg.
Let me ask Jim Davidson something here for a second. Jim, do people who are elected to Congress generally suffer a decline in their living standards? We've heard that indeed these guys, so many of them are wealthy, that it's a hardship for them to take a job. I don't think it's a hardship, because I think somewhere along the line they got their hand in the taxpayer's pocket and they're getting payoffs.
Well, I'd say 2 things need to be said. One is the average member of the House gets a raise when he gets his pay right now. Secondly, I would be in favor of adjusting their pay for inflation back to what they got in about 1919 or 1949, which would mean they'd have to get a $30,000 or $40,000 cut in today's terms.
Well, it depends on what you use the base year.
Secondly, here's another point. My good friend Jim Glassman has just told you we need to pay these congressmen more so we can attract a higher caliber of congressmen. And I ask the question, can anyone who's in favor of this pay increase name one member of Congress who's going to step aside and say, now I'm retiring to make way for somebody who's better qualified since you have a higher pay for this person to get? The answer is there isn't anybody like that. They're all in there. And what the problem we have in this country is that congressmen are reelected perpetually. They put what will reelect
98%. And that's true in Congress.
They are, and I don't think that's a sign that they're doing a bad job.
Well,
Wait, if they were doing a bad job, they'd be voted out.
I think it becomes a sign, Jim. I think it becomes a sign that we have made it too easy for a sitting congressman to be reelected. He can use his entire term in office getting reelected. I think every bit of information that congressman sends out in the form of a newsletter should be out of his pocket. Let's find out how willing he is to deal.
You know, the average congressman, the average member of the House of Representatives has 20 times more job security than a member of the Politburo in Moscow. I checked just one-party states to find out how often people were returned to office. North Korea, there's a greater turnover than there is in the Congress and the House of Representatives in terms of people losing their jobs involuntarily. Albania was the only country I could find.
Albania. So you object to elections? You would like to throw everybody out?
No.
The voters have a chance to throw out congressmen they don't like. And in fact, in the last election, they threw out St. Germain.
Those congressmen get
almost everyone who was
hundreds of thousands of dollars in campaign contributions from business people, okay? and they snow under their challenges. The business
Six died,
tax
six were
gave
defeated by election.
17 times
True.
as
Tell
much
Bill
to
Chappell
the
in Florida
sitting
that story.
congressman.
I think he would be entertained by it.
Tell Freddie St. Germain, all right? You know something? Let's face it. Let's face it. Freddie St. Germain had his hands in the pockets of everyone. Of everyone. The people finally found out, and because
And they
he
kicked
was...
him out
They
immediately.
kicked him out
5 of
because
the 6
the bankers who had been his big supporters knew he was in trouble and didn't fill the pockets as well anymore. That's why he got kicked.
He spent almost $1 million on his campaign. And by the way, you bring up something that I am totally opposed to, which is that people like St. Germain, when they retire, if they were elected to Congress before 1980, can take the money that's in their campaign treasury and leave with it. And St. Germain has $250,000 right now that he can keep for himself. And I think that is a crime, frankly. And that's
The
that's
big
legal.
crime.
But
I think the big crime is that Freddie St. Germain tomorrow can turn around and go to work for a big banking consortium, make all kinds of bucks because he knows his way through the labyrinth known as Washington. And yet those same congressmen vote that executive members who go into business afterwards can't go in for X number of years, all right? So it's okay for Knopfsinger to be guilty and be going to jail, but these same birds who made the law that he goes to jail, make sure that they never get trapped by the law. In a second, we're going to find out, do congressmen want bigger salaries so they can get more sex?
The Morton Downey Jr. Show, furnished by Quality Limousine Service. When in New Jersey, call 201-785-9071.
All right. Now I'm going to introducing you at loudmouth number 2. We have Bill Thomas, who is with Roll Call. He's a columnist heard on the Hill. Roll Call is a daily paper, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's a daily paper that comes out once a week?
Correction. It's a weekly paper that
Weekly,
comes out
once a week.
Yeah.
Comes out and it has all the activities of Congress, you know. It should be really exciting toilet reading. But actually to these guys it is because they want to pick out little things so you can send them back home, et cetera, et cetera. Bill, let me just ask you, you're a well-known Washington insider who recently did a show with Geraldo on sex scandals in the Capitol. Now, that show was so damn steamy that the corporate bigwigs decided it should not go on the air.
Never aired, no.
Well, I got to tell you, Bill, we got real nice folks around here. And they'll let it air here, so tell me what happened on that show. This is my kind of guy.
Well, you tell me. I don't know what kind of a show would not be allowed to be shown, but this one was looked at by lawyers for about a month, and it was finally decided that it was too hot even for Geraldo to handle. But the guests on the show, I was one of the guests on the show. Paula Parkinson was another guest, lobbyist / traveling companion.
All three of those things, huh?
Rudy Max was another guest on the show. Rudy Max, a reporter in Washington, was another guest on the show. And Paula mentioned the names of a number of congressmen that she'd slept with. Names that she mentioned later on in the Larry King show, and that was broadcast.
Paula did this?
Yeah, on the
Name congressmen?
Name congressmen.
Like who?
Well, she mentioned their names on the Larry King show. She mentioned Jack Kemp, who's just been nominated HUD secretary.
Mm-hmm. She certainly knows a lot about houses, then.
She mentioned on the Larry King show the name of Guy Vanderjack, who is a Republican senator from Michigan.
Seems like the Republicans have more propensity for getting it straightened out than Democrats do.
Well, Paula pointed out she's a Republican. So,
bless her. She stayed within her own party.
And others as well.
You've only named 2 Republicans. Are any Democrats involved?
No Democrats.
I'd like to see that she made a bipartisan effort.
As she pointed out, she's a Republican
and sticks to the party line.
Sticks to the party line.
Nor they
Votes
stick.
the straight ticket, as it were.
That's right. And that's the only reason they wouldn't let that on the air? Anyone else have anything to say?
Paula provided... Paula also talked about Dan Quayle's attempt to pick her up in Florida during that
What happened? He laid an egg?
infamous golf trip. Well, she had a date at the time.
She had a date.
She was on a date at the
She
time.
realized she could have been with the Vice President of the United States.
Well, that would have been down the road. This was about, let's see, 7 years ago.
This is before he straightened himself out.
Yeah,
And that's all that show was about?
that was it.
And that's all the only reason they wouldn't let it on? Get a chair and hit him in the nose, will you?
It was really, the show was an historical document. It's unfortunate that people didn't get to see that. It was filmed a couple of days before the election, and they were going to show it the Monday before the presidential election.
How did Paula start off, Paula Parkinson? She's a lobbyist now.
She was a
right?
lobbyist.
Was she?
She lobbied for a group of insurance companies that insured agricultural products. If you're a farmer and you're...
So she liked to get plowed.
So, apparently.
Some good one-liners. That'll probably be zipped right out. But
She took her work home with her. She was a lobbyist in Washington. There are 18,000 of them, and she was one of many, many lobbyists in Washington. And
I was a lobbyist down there at one point, but nothing like that ever happened to me.
what did you lobby for?
Huh?
What did you lobby
I
for?
lobbied for companies like American Home Products, Stax Records, National Right to Life, things like that. But I, of course, only ones I'd have ever been approached by were Bella Abzug, and that would be enough to make you sick. Let's get back to the pay raises. All right? Speaking of raises, let's get back to the pay raises.
Well, dating costs a lot of money.
Dating costs
Dating
a
in
lot?
Washington costs a lot of money, and these guys...
They
need
do
the
a lot
money
of
to-
dating? Is that a town?
From what you hear.
Is that a town
They
of
need
old?
our money to go on their dates, our money.
Well, dating costs.
Well, are we
Great.
talking?
You want them to have money? Take it out of your pocket and give it to them. They should have their pay lowered.
But you're
lowered the
right.
wages.
You're absolutely right, because all we're paying for is a house of ill repute.
That's exactly
known
it.
as Washington, D.C.
Both parties are as crooked as a dog's hind leg. Both of them. Okay?
Well, crooked in what sense?
In what sense?
Yeah.
Okay. In the last election, both parties took over $60 million in campaign contributions from individuals, $100,000 each. That's illegal because theoretically you now have public payment for the campaign. They said, no, this is not for Dukakis and Bush. This is for party building. So in some of the states, like in Illinois, Dukakis had the Dukakis campaign met in a broom closet. But right next door was the party building campaign with all these batteries of phones and so on and so forth, paid for by 150 people who gave $100,000 each. That's the Democrats. Republicans took in $240 $100,000 campaign contributions. All illegal. Like the New York Times says, it's sewer money.
So this
sewer money.
really what we're talking about is we have a government that is being run on bribes.
On bribes.
That's all these are,
On bribes. On bribes. Honorariums.
A businessman be put in jail.
Dishonorariums.
One of these people, a policeman or a fireman in our audience, be put in jail.
Well, look, just use your common sense. These people aren't going to bribe the Congress because they don't have the money to do
and
it.
we can't bribe
It's
them
the
even
rich.
with a $100 contribution.
That's right. What's $100,000? $100 is chump change when they can go out and get $100,000 from some
about this,
from
and people
Shore-
get in
Walter
trouble
Shore
and people go to jail, okay?
Well, name the congressmen who've gone to jail on these laws.
Well, I can tell you a congressman who's about to go to jail.
Okay.
That's Mario Biaggi.
On that law?
Who's been convicted twice, once for taking an illegal
scam.
gratuity, as it was called, in the coastal dry dock case, and the other was in the WedTech case.
Yeah, but not for taking honorariums and not for taking bucks
that's because
from the
taking
pack
honorariums
rats.
is legal. You know, if
Yeah,
you
but
want
what
to
it
try-
is,
Honest
you say
grab.
it's
Like
legal.
grab.
You say it's legal, Jim, but what it is,
Why steal when you can get it legally?
it's legal.
I
It's
don't
legal,
know.
but we all
It's
know.
sleazy, but
We
it's
all
legal.
know. We all know it's a circumvention of morality, don't we? Because what he's saying.
Look, I agree, it is sleazy, okay? I think the law ought to be changed, but it's legal. So don't go
here's
around
something
saying
that-
that people...
somebody talk about
illegal.
something that's
Sleazy
legal that
and
they
legal,
ought
we
not to
should
be
give
doing.
them
And that-
a
wait,
Let me hear this,
They're
gentlemen.
paying.
Let me hear. Zip for a second. Let me hear you. Jim,
What the
I
people...
go for anything.
let me hear Jim a second.
What the people listening to this broadcast ought to be concerned about is not only the honoraria, but the big question, which really offends justice, is that these guys are voting themselves a pay increase, all the while pretending not to do it. They're going to get the president to recommend a pay increase which, by the way, will raise his pension. So he, in the last 2 weeks of his
Also
term,
raise his salary to $350,000.
But he's leaving, and it will not raise Bush's salary either.
Not
And they are
correct.
not voting, by the way.
Wait, yeah,
the President
of
of
course
the
they're not
United
going
States
to
is
vote.
making the recommendation.
All right, the President of the United
And he's
States,
supposed to
hold
be-
on. The President of the United States makes the
raise
recommendation.
Reagan's pension.
These guys are going to be
Will
out of
raise
session
Reagan's pension.
for 19 days of the 30 days that they have to vote it down, and if Bush should veto their override, then they have to override the veto within 30 days.
In
Otherwise,
addition, let me ask you
it
this.
takes
In addition,
effect
Mr.
without their
Cutler.
vote.
In addition, Mr. Cutler, who heads that commission now, all right, appointed by the president, was he in government?
Yes, he was.
Yeah, whose administration?
Carter's.
Yeah. See?
It's like hiring the Pentagon, the military-industrial complex, and creating a commission made up of military contractors to recommend the salaries of the Pentagon
Let me
officials.
ask Bill a question
That's
here. Bill,
ridiculous.
Bill, the average American family earns roughly $20,000 a year, all right? That is painful, my friend. When Congressman earns 6 times more than the average American, as it's proposed right now, how in the hell can that congressperson possibly know what it's like to live like an average American and represent us possibly?
Well, you know, most
They
of
don't
these
want to know.
most of these guys really are average Americans. I mean, they would
They were until they got there.
no, they would. Well, what is an average American? They would blend in at a Lions Club or a Rotary Club. They
all wear blue suits and red ties.
1/3 of the Senate of the United States are millionaires.
That's right. And the
42%
reason that
of the House
1/3 is that
Representatives
those
are
are the
lawyers.
people who can afford to be
62%
members of
the
Congress.
Senate of the United States are lawyers.
There's nothing wrong
What
with being
you've
a
got.
millionaire, but I don't think that you should go to Congress to become a millionaire.
Well,
I
you
mean,
know,
that's-
you don't go to Congress to be... That's ridiculous. You don't go to Congress.
You know,
Obviously, you don't go to Congress.
Here's what bothers me.
By the way.
Here's what bothers me. Just the point that you brought up, all right? Getting this PAC money, playing the games to get themselves reelected. I don't agree that power corrupts. I think seeking power is what corrupts.
What's the difference?
There is a difference. At least when you have power, sometimes they'll be magnanimous like Franco was in Spain, all right? It's the seeking of that power that really corrupts this nation. And we're allowing our congressmen to seek power that does not belong to them. It belongs to the people. Should congressmen have the right to decide their own salaries? No way. Come on. Let me ask the editor of Roll Call a question. Bill, Dan Rostenkowski proposed once that every congressman set his own salary. Now, if that were true, that might put the feet to the fire, all right? Because I don't think most Americans would vote for a man who set a salary at $130,000 a year while this company of ours called the United States is running at such a great loss.
Well, if they did, I think they'd probably look very carefully at what the person, Rostenkowski in this case, was doing for the money. I mean, voters would base their decision when they went into the polling place on very cost-effective considerations. They would look carefully at what the guy wanted out of the job and whether or not he was performing up to the pay he'd requested.
Let me ask all of you a quick question before we go to the audience, all right? Why don't we have a cost of living increase every other year instead of these huge raises? Example, I realize a congressman has to live in 2 areas, all right? So he spends approximately half the time in Boston, Teddy Kennedy, or in Hyannisport, the other part of the time in Washington, D.C. And let's base that increase on what the cost of living is in the town where they live. 50-50. Washington, D.C. cost of living goes up 25%. They're entitled to a 12.5% increase. Boston, Massachusetts, Hyannisport, it goes up 6%. They're entitled to a 3% cost of living increase. So you've got 15.5% as the cost of living increase. Why don't we base it that way?
I think that's a great idea. And in fact, the reason we've got such a problem right now is because we're so far behind.
Cost of living.
Well,
Who deserves more?
To get back
I
into the
think-
indexing.
I think it wouldn't be bad to say 80% of the cost of living increase. But here's the important thing. The Quad Commission, which is the one that made this recommendation, this is Lloyd Cutler and all these guys, 20 years ago it got set up. At that time, Congress made $42,500 each. Since then, they've gotten about 100% increase, doubled their salary to $89,000.
A little bit more.
The cost of living has gone up, has tripled since then, and the cost of living in Washington has quadrupled.
But
since
they
then.
were
And in fact,
responsible
if
for
they
it.
had the
But they
CPI
were
That's
responsible
not even the
for
beginning
it.
of the problem. The real problem is
Well,
that
I
the
think it would
American
be great
people
to have
haven't
cost of
thought
living.
through, the people haven't thought through what the wage of a congressman should be. And I'll make a recommendation for what
do you mean they
what it
haven't
should
thought?
be. It should be the wage of a skilled worker, okay? An ordinary Joe lunchbox, okay? Because there was a guy named Abraham Lincoln who said that democracy is supposed to be of the people,
Well, look, we
by
can
the people,
We can get
and
lots of
for the
ideas in
people.
here. I'd even go further, all right? Why should other constituencies who have nothing to do with electing that congressman have anything to do with his pay? Let's give him his $89,500, all right? And then let's, once every election year, go back while this man is running again, or every other year, go back and say, all right, constituency, you set his pay. Is it $45,000? Is it $150,000? How much you like this guy? What kind of a job is he doing for you? Because you're the ones he represents. That 440,000
It
people out
sounds
there.
easy, but it's too complex because they'd be having different wages, okay? You want the same...
that's a
Good.
good
I'll
idea.
tell you, different
I'll tell you
ways.
what...
You
I'll
have
tell you what
different
you have,
skills
what they
in
should
Congress.
get. They should all be given, like they're given office space now, they should be given an apartment in Washington. Just like, you're here, you get it
Let's set up
automatically.
a big, let's set up a large
wage-
apartment building for these
Right,
guys,
right.
and then we
But
can
the
find
wage
out who they're
should
screwing
be
around
that
with.
of a
look.
skilled worker, and I would
Look,
recommend
the average
specifically
congressman has
that
got
their
to-
wage be that of a newspaper man on the Washington
Quickly, this
Post.
man, I want to go to
If
the
you go
audience.
back to all through this century, the Congress today is paid more by $10,000 a year than they have as an average throughout this century. If you gave them a cost of living increase to compensate for all the losses of inflation over the average period of this century, then you'd have to cut their pay by $10,000 right now. Secondly, the reason that housing prices have gone up so much, which is a big part of the cost of living in Washington, is that these guys have not balanced the budget since 1969. So we have a huge debt which has been laid on the backs of every person in this country. And why shouldn't they suffer for the cost that they're imposing?
Why don't
we
we tell the
look,
audience
more than
first? I
that.
want to tell the audience in
Media
case...
has come
Wait
down
a second!
Dave,
Zip
out.
it! I want to tell the audience, in case you're becoming bored with this, we got a murder case coming up next. I want to go to this gentleman. Let's go to the audience. You've heard the argument.
Okay, I think that these guys are overpaid and underworked, first of all. Why don't we dock these guys' time? If they're not showing up at meetings, if they're not voting on time, I have to work my ass off
There's a
every
law to
day.
that effect, but they don't enforce it.
Well, why don't we
Well,
pay...
that's baloney.
I have to
Yeah,
work
first of all,
every
that's-
day.
Well,
40
yeah, there may
hours
be a
week
law,
to
but
pay
they...
for school. What am I making?
I give them the same 15 sick days that I have, or that a lot of other people have.
That's right.
And then they say, well, that's it. If they're too sick to go to work, they're too sick to be in Congress.
I got to work my ass off every day.
You
to
can
pay
say,
for school. What am I making? $7 an hour?
You can say what you want about congressmen. You can say they pass lousy bills, that they're terrible people. But you can't say, if you've ever been up on the Hill, that they don't work hard, because they do.
Why not let them
Congressmen
do
go back.
some real work?
He's got to say that. I mean, he runs the damn newspaper. Let me hear this gentleman, because he's got
How can you hang a dollar figure on a service that they're providing that affects the future of each and every one of us? Our education.
Gentleman is absolutely right.
No, wait a second.
He's
You've got
absolutely
ball
right,
players.
and we've gotten lousy service.
Yeah, but you've got baseball players, you've got Major League sports stars who are earning multi-million-dollar contracts on an annual basis to play games.
At least they're doing something with their bodies
There's a
besides
difference
belly
between
flopping into
entertainment-
a bed.
Hold on, I'd just like to give you one example. Last year, according to Forbes magazine, Abbott and Costello made $400,000, which is 5 times as much as a congressman, and they're dead, and they're not even funny.
And so are most of the congressmen. Let me hear this gentleman. Come on.
You know, why do we have to set up a system where congressmen
How do you get
rich?
to Congress in the first place, being elected, because you're rich? So what the hell you need the money for once you get there? You're already rich.
Most of them are not rich.
One-third of the Senate are
Wait a
millionaires.
second. This is the audience segment. Please let them hear. I'd like to... Go ahead, pal.
You're already rich once you get there, so
No,
why...
most of the congressmen are. Most of the senators.
they're not.
Most of it, you're already rich, so why do you
Senators
need all
are
the
in for
money?
6 years, so they don't have to run all
Well, you know,
the time. Let me hear
Congress
this
is a
gentleman,
stepping stone, in a way, to better jobs. Most congressmen serve 3 or 4 terms. they learn about Washington, they learn how the system works, and they move on to something better. But you know, the sad thing is, this gentleman here who's so upset about how much congressmen make, probably doesn't even know who his congressman is. Do you?
Who? He knows.
Well, you're...
You see, let me tell you something. This is the mistake that the elitist intellectuals make about this audience.
I'm not an
They
elitist.
know more than those damn people do. Should a preppy lady killer get off for killing a diet doctor? Come on. In March of 1980, Jean Harris, the headmistress of a posh all-girls school outside of Washington, D.C., got in her car, drove to the affluent suburb of Scarsdale. She brought a pistol with her. She took it out of her purse, walked into the house, and killed her lover of 12 years, the diet doctor, Herman Turnover. She was sentenced to 15 years in prison. All right? Premeditated murder, of course. The jury didn't find it that way. She served half of her sentence, a little bit over half of her sentence now, and is eligible under the law for a pardon at the discretion of New York Governor Mario Cuomo. Tonight we ask the question, should Jean Harris, a convicted murderer, go free after serving half of what was already an extremely light sentence? And we have some guests here for you that I'd like to introduce. At home base, we have Robert Gould, who is a very prominent attorney from this area of the country. Harry Leipzig was supposed to be with us. Harry, you're out there at home base number 1. Good to see you, also a prominent attorney. And Cy Friedman, a retired New York City judge. So I would say to Cy first, Your Honor, if this were your court, would you vote for clemency in the case of Jean Harris?
Well, a judge hasn't got the exercise of clemency. The judge that sentenced her had his sentence appealed as part of the appeal process, and the sentence was deemed just and legal. Clemency comes into play after that appeal process has run out. Clemency is based on compassion, on weighing all the facts, namely the health of the person.
She healthy?
Not too healthy. The amount she has served, the punishment that represents, and whether or not they deem her rehabilitated. Will she be a menace to society? To answer your question directly, if I were the governor, I wouldn't hesitate a minute to grant her clemency.
Okay. Let me go to Harry. Harry, all of the pablum pukers in America have come out in favor of the releasing of Jean Harris. But if she were a black man serving heavy time for murder, do you think the New York Times would be writing editorials in favor of freeing her?
Your voice was just a little too sweet and soft this time for me to hear you. You were completely out of character when you were asking me that question.
I was asking a simple question, Harry, that says...
Make it simple for me.
Simple question that says, this woman was a white woman with a great education. Were it a black woman, an Hispanic woman, who were placed in prison for the same murderer, same type of murder, would you feel that she is entitled to clemency?
If she was rehabilitated and was of the background of...
No punishment involved here, right?
If she was rehabilitated, as this woman has been, and has shown all of the progress in rehabilitation that this woman has been, it wouldn't matter to me if she was green, yellow, pink, black, or orange.
Okay.
And she'd be entitled to the same consideration, and she'd get the same
bottom line,
consideration today,
Morty,
regardless, hold it a minute. Regardless of what you imply in that regard, they would get
imply
the
it,
same.
pal. It's a fact.
The question implies a great deal. They would get, whoever it was would get the same consideration without question, especially today with the progress in civilization that we are making in spite of all of the obstacles to it.
Okay.
Morty, the bottom line is that that's total nonsense.
All right.
There are right now probably, I would say, 5,000
members of the lower eco-socio group in our country who are serving in prison, who are as rehabilitated as Jean Harris, and there is nobody out there asking for their release.
And
She
equally
is a
educated.
product. Let me finish.
Harry, let him finish
Of
now.
course.
Good boy.
She is a product of privilege. She comes from high society background. She taught in a very high society school. She is an intellectual. She has written a book. This is the reason that there is a movement on to free her.
She should have
The
read
bottom
one before
line-
she committed the murder.
Absolutely.
Called the Bible.
Let me finish. The bottom line is she's a murderer. She committed murder. And she's lucky she lived.
Let me ask, wait a second, let me ask the judge.
finish.
Well, no, Bob, we're rambling on forever. Bob, Judge, let me ask you a question. What was she convicted of? First, second, third, manslaughter, what was it? Does anyone know the answer to that?
I think it was manslaughter in the first degree.
Manslaughter in
I
the
think
first
so.
degree.
Well,
Well,
maybe-
that's
yeah.
interesting because we have just done a show not too long ago with a fellow that I got out of prison after 14 years in Indiana for manslaughter first degree. He got a life sentence for it. We got him out of prison finally, and they discovered he
people who
didn't
commit
do it.
violent crimes who are granted clemency, so I don't accept Bob's argument. What Bob is talking about is a lot of...
My guy was a
What
black
Bob
guy.
is saying is absolute nonsense. She is to
What I
be judged. She is to be judged. She is to be judged as a human being. What did she do? Why did she do it? How long has she been punished? What's her health? And is she a menace to anybody? Is she going to go out and kill anybody else? Of course not.
What kind of a system do we have, Judge?
Well, we
when
have people
this
who
woman
get
has written
clemency.
2 books while in prison. She couldn't profit from the first because she wrote it about the murder, all right? But she's actually making money off her second book. What kind of a country is it that lets a murderer go home after 9 years and make money off her crime?
If it wasn't in New York State, and if it was at another day in New York State, and she was convicted of murder, which there's no question she did. She came up here with premeditated murder, no matter what.
They didn't commit
No, that doesn't matter. The bottom line is there's no question about the fact that there was a premeditation. She came from Washington with the gun.
Don't go to the gas chamber.
Exactly. The bottom line is it's not equal justice for everybody. If you're rich, if you can write a book, if you're an intellectual, you get a superior system of justice, and that's why there's a tremendous movement of bleeding hearts that are trying to have the governor exercise his right
No, I'm going
to
to
grant a
surprise
pardon.
you. I'm going to surprise you, all right, before we come back.
I'm a
Before you
little
come back,
shocked
Harry, I'm
about-
going to surprise you by talking right over you, all right? I'm going to surprise
That
you.
would never
I'm going to surprise
surprise
you
me.
by telling you something. I think everything she's done is despicable. I think there should be, the punishment should match the crime. But indeed, if I am going to propose that the middle class and the poor of this country get the same type of equal justice, then I am going to propose that Jean Harris, indeed, be given that clemency. But when you give it to her, Governor, remember there's some poor people out there and some middle-class people who deserve one, too. Give it to them. Our audience speaks.
Say that again.
Downey Jr. show, stay at the Meadowlands Hilton Hotel.
I want to get to the audience, but I forgot Harry Leipzig out here wanted to shoot his mouth off about something, so...
You know what puzzles me about your views on granting clemency to this lady? She was the victim of a man who was enamored of other women, and he got his just desserts. And what amazes me...
Wait a second. Wait a second. You're saying...
Now, wait a
you're
minute. Let
saying-
me finish.
You're saying you go out and get a piece of the rock, you deserve the knock?
No question about it. And I can think of nobody who could be in the position of opposing her clemency to her that could do it with less reason than you when I think of the victims of your infamous conduct in the past and the hearts that you trod upon so many times. And how the hell you got away with it so far? If I was in the position of one of these ladies, I would do just what Jean Harris did with reference to you, and I'd do it with pleasure. And that's my view of you And the idea of you having...
Harry, when you got it, want it, baby. Now let me go.
This gentleman over here said that...
certainly do just that, flaunt
Oh,
it.
Harry, just because you at least you can get your voice up, Harry.
I wish
This gentleman says that she'll never kill again. How do you know that she's not going to kill again?
How do I know that? Enough, nobody knows. Nobody knows.
So
But
why should she
all
get
the-
out then?
All the experts say that she is of minimal risk. She's less of a risk than almost anybody
Tell
who's
that to
sitting in
the
this room.
families. Tell that to the families of the people who were killed
Now,
by
Bob,
people who were
Bob,
released like
hold it.
Tell it to their children. Tell it to their parents.
Hold it. Like Harry. I'll even go along with Harry.
I don't want Bob to rabble-rouse. The idea of punition and the idea of saying, let's worry about her family. Punition and worrying about a family, that's not an issue in a clemency hearing.
Just listen, one thing
I
straight.
want to hear the audience, you guys. Go.
I'm from the affluent section of Harrison, New York, where Dr. Tarnower lives. So if I'm going with somebody and I kill somebody, I should be given the same rights as Jean Harris being put in a country club prison and letting her teach these people to do things and get out on a short term.
I just want to know who decides who gets clemency. Who decides this? If your name is Patty Hearst,
Governor Cuomo.
so that if you're an unknown and you're Joe Jones, you can sit there for 20 years.
Right, your
and you
chances
could be
are
rehabilitated.
Too good.
That's not
And you
done.
can be a good guy, and you could be really sorry that you did it, and the experts can say all they want. And you're going to sit there. But you can be Patty Hearst, and because the governor knows who you are, now you come out in 5 years, I can't agree
Now,
with
that
that.
isn't the process at all.
What is it?
The process is that rather than the process, I want to hear what the people have to say.
I think she should rot. Murder's murder. She should rot in jail. As long as it's turned out with that. What is it? Just because you write a book, that means you could be freed? Just because, even though you murdered somebody? I think that's ridiculous.
Of course, it's ridiculous. And the bottom line is...
Bob agrees.
But, all right,
Bob
wait a
agrees.
second.
You got a
Wait,
perfect
he agrees
partner.
it's
ridiculous
Then
that
I
she
think
writes a
that
book
she
and
should
gets
get the
out.
electric chair. Just like somebody else.
Go ahead, ma'am. Oh, Harry, zip it.
All right.
Stay.
I mean, that's what you want me to do, zip it. So.
No, more.
Go ahead, Harry.
More. Have you
The
noticed,
Coliseum has spoken. Go.
have you noticed the
I sold it for $40 million. He hit me.
It should have been 50, but Mort, what strikes me, and this is right in line with what I said on 60 Minutes one day with reference to women jurors.
The original.
If the woman that you represent is good looking, throw the damn women off the jury. And if she's dashing, they'll burn her at the stake. And the thing that I've noticed here is that the people that are crying out for burning this girl at the stake, every one of them has been a woman. And I think that's right
No
in
one
line
wants to
with
burn her
my...
at the stake. She's alive. She's well. She's
because
right.
they're women, they can't have an opinion that opposes yours.
They have an opinion, and always if it involves another woman, especially if she's good looking, and especially if she's...
Go ahead, sweetheart. Go ahead. Let me hear this lady. Go ahead, sweetheart. Let me hear this lady.
She should stay where she is until her time is up.
We'll be back with the audience. Hang in there. Come on. Happy New Year, pal. Because I believe that by the time this show airs in a few days, Jean Harris will be about to walk from that quote-unquote prison. Your opinion?
There's only one thing that can be said, and this is to you, Harry. Don't do the crime if you can't do the time. You know, because...
think the big issue here is that it was a premeditated murder, and it's just so many people walk because they plead insanity, and you've got to be insane to kill someone in the first place. So if they get to walk, then why shouldn't she?
40 years ago, you know, when the state of New York had this crime been committed, we wouldn't be talking about this show right now. A life was taken, a life was given. All right, but we are now in the age of enlightenment. Man, let's teach people better education. Let's teach them that we're empathetic towards their sickness. They took crack. The poor thing was sick. I give them sick. I'd send loose a raving axe murderer on some of these people. You should be defended. He should be defended. I should be defended. A guy like Tarnower, sure, he was scum. But do you get the death sentence for it? I don't know. You give us the life sentence, and I love you. Have a Happy New Year.